Hello, everyone. Welcome to Current and Future Leaders. Thank you so much for joining us. As you can see, we're having a special show today because unless you've been living in a cave, you know that it was Oscars weekend in the United States. So we're having a little fun and we are celebrating the Oscars. With our guest today, I'm going to bring her in right away. Elin T, please join the program.
Woohoo! Hi, Jason, and hi
Hello,
everybody
everyone.
calling in.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us for this special episode. For our audience, I'm Jason Seymour. I'm the host and I am the spokesperson for the U.S. mission to ASEAN. I'm so eager to get to Elin. I have so many questions for you. I want to talk about the Oscars. I want to talk about the slap that everyone's talking about, Jada and Will and Chris and all of that fun. But we'll get to that in a moment, but I want to talk to you, but actually I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to start right off on the top, just like they do in the Oscars. They go to an award. So I'm going to ask you this question. Do you have a favorite song that you wish won an Oscar or did win an Oscar? What would be your song choice?
Ooh, okay. I think for me, I'm really happy that "Be Alive" by Beyonce won. So I'm a huge Beyonce fan. If it
Uh,
was any other song, I think it would be "Run the World."
Excellent. And for those who saw the Oscar, it was beautifully choreographed. It was quite a show. Maybe you can YouTube that. So if I had to pick an Oscar song that's one of my favorites, it would be, so from a little while ago, it would be When You Believe. There's nothing quite like seeing Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston come together, two amazing singers sing together, and what a beautiful song, When You Believe. Because if you're going to be a leader, you have to believe in yourself. That's the first step. If you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. So there's lots that I'd like to talk to you. The reason I know you is because you went on a special U.S. government program, which is called the Women's Leadership Academy. I'd love to talk to you about that. We'll save some time for that at the end. But I want to go straight to your current job, because your current job is so interesting. It pulls on skills of psychoanalysis, even though I know you're not a psychoanalyst, but understanding human behavior and men and women and mothers and fathers and consumers and workers. So please tell our audience a little bit about what you do.
Thanks so much, Jason, for the lovely introduction. And obvious, I think definitely, we definitely have to believe, right, in terms of making sure that we're going to be alive, and doing things and championing things that we believe in, right? So my name is Eileen. So currently I am in AEON Retail Group. So we're one of the largest retailers here in Malaysia. And we operate supermarket, groceries, all the way to general merchandising stores. So I would say I'm very, very lucky to be in a position where I am today because I look after customer experience and customer relations management. And that allows me to actually engage and connect with, people from all walks of life, not just from the customers aspect, but our employees and also the different stakeholders that engage with us, creating this wonderful ecosystem where we continue to serve our customers from all walks of life through their daily needs and through their different life stages. Because you cannot run away from not eating, not buying groceries, not buying clothes, right? So I think I'm very fortunate to be able to sit in the organization and look after this piece called customer experience.
So how does one, lots of people listen to this show and they are entrepreneurs or they're hopeful entrepreneurs and they want to develop a business, they want to make a profit. That's an important part of having a business, but they want to understand how their product will match their customers. So tell us a little bit, what kind of market research do you do? What are some tips that you might have for potential business owners? What kinds of questions should they be asking? Please share some insights with us.
Sure. I think it's fundamentally very important to start with empathy, right? Empathy, I think, is a very powerful skill set and a tool to really understand and know your audience, right? So empathy begins with really understanding from the point of view of the customer, understanding what are their pain points, what are the problems they want to solve, and then defining how actually your product or your service will actually help them solve a problem, and understand how much they're willing to pay for it. Because every product that we have in the market, like be it, for example, this water bottle, right? We're actually hiring this water bottle to do a service for us. Like for me, it's to contain water, for me to drink water, right? So every product or service, as an entrepreneur that you want to push out to the market, you need to really fundamentally ask yourself, is the product that or the service that I'm going to push out going to solve a problem, right? And an inherent problem, right? And if that is, and you find a match, that's where you know you've got a product market fit, and you know there's willingness for customer to actually take up your specific product and buy your services, right? First, with empathy. Second is, I think, knowing how to do go to market, right? So after you've got your product, how then do you actually market your product so people know about it and be able to bring it to market, right? So I personally, on the side, I actually do handmade co-processed soap with my mom for fun. And I also kind of practice this whole skill set of entrepreneurship as well, and trying to know my market and bring it to market, right? And I think in today's day and age, it's not really just selling a product anymore. It's really also selling a brand. So it's how do you actually know how to brand your product, right? And be able to bring through the values that, as a brand or your product that you want to carry. I think that's where you really be able to connect to your customers, connect to your consumers, and be able to serve the demand or the need that they have.
That is a really good point about branding, and it's interesting that you mentioned soap. So I'm very particular about the soap I use. I don't want a lot of chemicals and preservatives. So I look for a company that seems to click with my values. So I may not understand all the things that are listed in that soap, but if I start to get a sense that this brand really cares about my health and keeping things more organic, more natural, then I'm going to start trusting them and always buy from that company. So branding, reliability, that's huge. Now, it's interesting. It's interesting because there's a lot of discussion about sex and gender and whether men and women really are different, or should we see them all as individuals. When you do your market research and you're promoting a product, do you find that men and women, that you can stereotype men and women or generalize about them and how they might respond to a campaign? I know that's a big question, but what have you found?
Thanks so much, Jason. I wish I honestly had a crystal ball to that, right? Because I think fundamentally humans, right, whether you're male, you're female, we're all uniquely different, right? And I think
That's
how
right.
we shop, how we behave actually changes, right? Especially, I think, post-pandemic world.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things that we didn't think was possible before, now it's actually possible, right? So I don't think there's a way to kind of generalize how, for example, men shop or how women shop. But I think from the perspective of a retailer, it's whether we can actually be very inclusive and actually accommodate to how you want to shop, when you want to shop, where you want to shop, right? And being able to really provide that personalized service and demand, right? So that you're then able to be in control, right? I think a lot of consumers, they want to be in control with how the experience is, how the narrative is. So that really makes it, I guess, my job really interesting, but also really tough, right? Because, for example, how I would market to maybe a mother to be will be very different for how I'm going to market to maybe a mother who's been, not a first time mother, right? So it's very different in terms of how you actually engage, how do you talk, right? And so that makes it very, very interesting. On how to engage with different segment of the audiences, right? But I guess if you were to stereotype and bucket it, right? Like I think generally in retail, right, we attract a lot more women to shop with us, right? And I think not just from the retail aspects. So previously I was in property, and we talked about like how when it comes to especially big ticket purchase items, like men would, although some would buy, right, based on their own preference or liking, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's the female or the women behind that's going to actually get the green light whether to buy or not. Because I've got my salespeople telling me before, if the husband had bought the home and the wife wasn't happy about it, they're going to get it for the rest of their life staying in that house, right? So, and it could be a very I guess, prominent figure or a person, but he will still fall back to, okay, you know what, before I sign the deal, I want to have a session with my wife and make sure she's really happy with this, right? So I think in general, shopping behavior, I think it's still dominated by the women market, but that doesn't mean that men do not have shopping needs, right? So I think it's a way to figure out what's the best way to engage and cater to everybody in today's day and age, where you have offline and you have online. We're talking about omni-channel, trying to reach everyone at any point of time, anywhere, how you want to shop, where you want to shop.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because it is hard to generalize and to stereotype, but when you're marketing, you're trying to reach as many people as possible. So you are looking for those commonalities. And most market research absolutely supports what you were saying, that ultimately for couples or for families, if it's a relationship between a man and a woman and children, it's generally the mother who makes the final call. That's what the research shows over and over again. So I do want to ask you some follow-up questions about inclusivity, but why don't we switch to another category of the Oscars? And to our audience, if you're thinking of questions for Elin, please share them in the comments. And also, if you have ideas, who should have won the Oscars this year? Who should have won them in another year? We are going to do Best Actor. So my question for you, Elin, if you could name a performance by an actor who either won an Oscar or should have won an Oscar, which one would be one of your favorites?
My favorite would definitely be Leonardo DiCaprio.
Uh-huh.
I think it's probably a very common name and classic, right? I mean, I really like his performance and acting for several reasons, right? He's really acted in a lot of different types of movies and genres, and he's always excelled in them and makes it so intriguing to want to hear more and know more. So like for me, it's for Leonardo.
Do you have a particular movie with Leonardo that's one of your favorites?
I actually really like Great Gatsby.
Yes,
that was something
excellent.
I really loved. Yeah, it was excellently executed. It really drawed an emotional hook. I could feel really connected throughout the whole movie, and it didn't have like a pause where I was like, yeah.
I remember reading that movie caught a lot of movie analysts by surprise. They knew it would make some money, but they didn't think it would be quite as popular as it was, and it was huge. And part of that was the director and the choreography and the colors, but you also had top acting in that film, so that is a good one. My best actor choice would be someone who did win an Oscar for this performance, and it's one I watch every year or so, and it's Jamie Foxx in a movie called Ray. It's such a powerful story of Ray Charles. I'm a fan of Ray's music. The movie taught me a lot of elements of his life story that I didn't know, and Jamie Foxx just does an amazing job. He just impresses me every time I watch it. Wow, that's a good performance. So I enjoyed it very, very much. So to our audience, do you have a favorite performance by an actor? Share it with us in the comments. So we're going to talk about what happened at this year's Oscars with the Best Actor winner, Will Smith, in a moment. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about what you were saying about inclusivity, because there's the element of inclusivity in terms of marketing and doing your campaigns and trying to get customers. There's also the element of inclusivity in terms of your employees, how you recruit, and then how you treat the employees once they're working for your business. And we had a very interesting conversation before the show about changing rooms. And I would love for you to share that story with our audience.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jason. It was actually, I think, post International Women's Day, and we actually had a social media posting that went up, and I think a customer wrote in like saying that we should also think of ways as a retailer that we can actually be a lot more inclusive, for example, in our stores, in our locations, right? To empower more women to be able to be the best version of themselves, or be able to, be the super mom they need to be, and so on and so forth, right? So one of the things that I thought was very interesting that also caught me off guard, right? But all kind of like opened up my eyes was, for example, the sizes of changing rooms. So I am not a mother yet, so I might not be able to empathize with that, but what she has mentioned was that for Marks and Spencers, for example, the changing rooms are designed for the women changing rooms. They're normally designed to be a bit larger or bigger, right? So that allows, for example, mothers who are maybe shopping alone with their kids and their strollers to be able to push the whole stroller and the baby in while being able to, try on some clothes, right? And that actually was a very interesting insight that, hey, if for example, as a retailer, we wanted to be more inclusive, these are some of the things we can actually improve from a facilities or a design aspect, right? Making spaces a bit larger to accommodate to young mothers, expecting mothers. But for AEON, for example, for us, we actually design, I think I would say, really nice baby rooms that is really comfortable and very inclusive and taking care of all the needs of, like, young mothers who come and shop with us in our store. Yeah. So that's one
When
part
you
of
told me,
inclusivity.
Sure. When you told me that story, something clicked in my mind because I had never thought about that. I had never thought about the fact that, sure, if women are carrying strollers and all the equipment that's necessary, they're going to need more space. And that's why I always say that diversity and inclusion and recruitment, hiring in the workforce, it's not just about clicking boxes. It's about making sure that different types of people, different life experiences are represented, because we can't all think of every need and every personality, but if we have a really diverse pool of employees, lots of different ideas are going to come up. So, as an observer, making those observations, making those comments, I want to hear, what did you think when you saw the Will Smith, Chris Rock, Jada Pinkett Smith moment happen?
Well, I think, to be very frank, Jason, I didn't watch the Oscars. So I think when it came to me, I was already just seeing all the pictures trending on social media, right? And I think what caught me like off guard, or like what I noticed from there, I think we were having this conversation yesterday, is how much everyone has kind of popularized that shot. I think that shot that it's been, like,
Yes.
trending and everywhere, right? But I think what's not
Yes.
spoken about, the unspoken part, is how Jada has actually dealt with this thing. I think I think that actually deserves more publicity than that photo that is actually circulating, right? Like the fact that she was very honest and she was courageous enough to actually embrace her truth, right? And be able to be okay with it and be a role model and example for people who also are suffering the same kind of situation that she's going through, right? So I think that's not spoken enough, and I think should be highlighted even more than just talking about, okay, this happened, they apologize, I do not condone violence, but nobody talks about how about, like, Jada actually owning up to her truth and being there and being present and embracing this whole situation and thing. Yeah.
We had a wonderful interview on this show with a woman who has a skin disease, and she was talking about all the experiences that men and women go through when they have a disease that they can't hide from others. So sometimes people are struggling with physical ailments, but they don't have to tell anyone. They can just keep it hidden between themselves and their physician. But when you have a skin disease, particularly in your scalp or your face, you can't hide that, and it's very, very difficult. And so for Jada to be so outspoken that she's struggling with this and to present herself, that is role model behavior for everyone. Also, I heard an interesting perspective, and I wonder what you think of this. When I first heard, so I should say I read about the incident before I saw the clip, and because I didn't catch it live either. But when I read it, I thought, oh, okay, well, G.I. Jane, that character would be a soldier, and soldiers are powerful, they're warriors, they're strong, and so it could be a compliment. So I wonder what you think about that. Is it possible that maybe there was a compliment tucked into that joke?
I think honestly, if it was a compliment, like it shouldn't have been like, that's my personal point of view. It shouldn't have been like said in that setting, right? Because he's a
Mhm.
comedian, right? And I think when he's in that context and that persona, right, like in that environment, it's easy to read it off wrongly, right? And especially if there's no kind of
Mhm.
follow up clarification after that, like it just doesn't bring up the light or the truth of what it could really be or what it would be, right? So I would say, like, I
Mhm.
think, yes, I do agree. It's also interesting, the reference of GI Jane. She's a soldier, she's a warrior. But I always believe, for words, especially words are so powerful, and the context really matters, right? The context of where you want to deliver, how you want to deliver, is really important. If not, it will be misconstrued or misunderstood.
The power of language and the never-ending potential for miscommunication and misinterpretation, and that's why usually I am extremely careful if I'm going to comment on anything about another person's body, because it's very dangerous, because you don't know what the other person's going through, and there could be a whole story there.
Yeah.
I've heard that Chris Rock said that he didn't know that Jada had alopecia, and while that gives a different context to his comments, still, it's just a sign. It's always a risk. If you make a comment about someone's body and you don't know the whole story, you could always get yourself into trouble.
Yep.
Of course, comedians, that's part of their profession, getting themselves into trouble.
That's true. That's
walking
true.
walking to the line and walking over the line. That's what they do. Well, speaking of role models, and I do see Jada, the way that she has handled her alopecia, as being a role model for people with skin diseases. I know that you have a special role model, and you have a special photo to share with us. Perhaps my assistant could bring up that photo now.
Yeah.
And there
Yeah.
she is. Tell us the circumstances of you taking this photo.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, I think this photo was actually taken when I was in university, so it's almost like 10 years ago. So you might not recognize me anymore. I've definitely gotten older. But
I
it
see.
was, I
I see
think,
the resemblance.
so it was taken during a Halloween party, right? So we had a
Mm-hmm.
theme where we had to dress up, and at the point of time, Wonder Woman movies had just came out, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think, felt very empowered and really believed in and loved the spirit of Wonder Woman, right? So if you know her value, she's always about truth, about justice, right? And I think, until now, it's really carried on with me, right? That, as whoever we are, wherever we are, we should always be honest and speak our truth, right? Because our truth always has a lot of power. Oftentimes, I guess, in life, right, a lot of things can sway or can, like, make you kind of move away from your truth because, for example, you want to be accepted, or you need to be part of society, or you need to conform to something, right? But I think there's a lot of power with speaking your truth, and that's why I think this photo, actually, it has been hidden for a while. And because I just got married about 2 weeks back, my dad gave a speech about me, and he told me, "Hey, I want to use this photo of you." And he actually told a story where I was in the last year of my uni, and I actually wanted to travel, so I had this dream of going to South America, but no one wanted to go with me. And being the only girl, only daughter in the household, and an Asian girl, right? Like, I think typical Chinese parents would be like, "No, you can't go alone. It's dangerous," right? So what I did was, because my truth said I want to do it and I want to go, so I actually bought a flight ticket, and after that, only told my dad that, "Hey, I'm actually going to South America alone for 3 weeks, and you can't stop me." Right? So I think this photo resurfaced up because my dad wanted to tell that story, and it's a great reminder, I guess, for me now, 10 years on, is that um, I also sometimes, I guess, forget that, that I need to also speak my truth and embrace my truth, because it has a lot of power. The moment you allow someone else to take away your truth, you kind of lose that inner authenticity and that inner strength that you've always had. Because if you think about it, if you're a child, a 3-year-old kid or a 5-year-old kid will never hide their truth, right? They will just say what's on their mind. They will do what they want to do. They will speak
Mm-hmm.
their truth all the time, and they hold it in their sleeve, right? So I think as adults, we grow older, we forget about it, right? And we start speaking to everybody else's truth, but not our own. So I would say Wonder Woman is my role model, and a great reminder for me in terms of that. And I think, for example, Jada speaking about her truth, right? Having her disease of alopecia, right? Like that is her speaking her truth, and it has a lot of power in that. Yeah.
There's a lot of power in finding your inner authenticity and inner strength. I love those phrases. That's fantastic. And you have nothing to be ashamed of with this photo. We'll probably use that for our thumbnail. It's now in the public domain.
Oh no.
Oh, you have nothing to be embarrassed about. I have some Halloween photos that are much more embarrassing, so don't worry about that. Well, speaking of women role models, let's take a moment to talk about an actress that has inspired us. So please share with us an actress whose performance you felt either deserved an Oscar or did get an Oscar.
For me, I think I'll be a bit biased here. So I would say like she definitely deserves an Oscar, like Michelle Yeoh. So she's a Malaysian actress, and she's
Yes.
kind of made her way, to the Hollywood scene from like a small town here in Ipoh, right? So I would say like she's amazing. She does like Chinese movies all the way to like Hollywood international blockbusters. So I would say like she's my all-time favorite.
Some of the audience might know Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, might know Crazy Rich Asians that came out
Yeah.
recently, and as you said, she's also made Asian films in multiple languages. Super, super talented. So for me, an actress that I've really enjoyed is Maggie Smith. She won an Oscar. She's very, very well known. She was in the Harry Potter movies, so some of our audience might know her from that. But she's from the United Kingdom, so as a representative of the US government, I've got to mention American. So a performance I remember that won an Oscar, which was so fun to watch and so exciting. Fun, moving, not just fun, but moving, was Julia Roberts in Erin Brockovich, the story of an environmental activist who was just not to be disparaging in any way, but just an average person, just living her life, and then came across this crisis, this situation that someone needed to address. And she showed that anyone can be a hero. Anyone. So, speaking of heroes, and we only have a few minutes left, I do want to talk a little bit about the Women's Leadership Academy, which you were a part of, and then you were part of the Alumni Network. It's a very special program. Just tell us a little bit about your experience with that U.S. Mission to ASEAN program.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jason, for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. I was very, very blessed in 2017. I got the opportunity to be selected to participate in the YSEALI Women's Leadership Academy. I think it was, the second year or the third year running at that point of time that the US Mission to ASEAN was doing this. So I was very privileged. I think it was a 5-day program, and I got acquainted with 40 amazing women who had the same passion, same ambition, and really wanted to progress and advance women in Asia, right? And I think from there, what was very exciting came up various opportunities, and also a lot of relationships and friendships that I've built even until today. Where I am right now, right? The opportunity came out was to actually build a network and ecosystem, because I think when you talk about connections, it's also about the ecosystem that you can build. And I was actually the co-chair, and I designed the whole sustainability leadership structure to allow the alumni network to actually operate and run in a way that it will be sustainable, right? So now it's actually being co-chaired by other participants from the program, but I'm so glad to hear it's still going strong, and the network is still championing various initiatives. And I think it was very interesting because at a point of time, it was just an idea. I remember, I think the team from US Mission to ASEAN came and said, hey, we want to build an alumni network. Does anyone want to volunteer? And I remember raising my hand. Okay, I don't know anything about it, but let's try, right? And I think it was like we kind of like put the pieces together. We tried it out. We experimented it, I'm leveraging on my experiences from other voluntary work. making sure that it will be sustainable, right? So whatever cohort, whatever network that's going to take over, it's also always going to be sustainable in its own form and way, and being able to drive and champion local impact in the countries where the participants are from. Yeah, so I think that was something that I really enjoyed. I am so appreciative and so grateful. It's also really shaped all my fundamentals of who I was back then and who I am today. So I have to say thank you so much to US Mission to ASEAN for giving me this opportunity.
Oh, it is our pleasure. And it's so exciting to see all the ladies who participate in that program, and they grow and they develop, and then they become mentors for other young leaders. That's a very important part of it. And I certainly hope anyone who's listening to the show is becoming a member of the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative, YSEALI. If you're interested in Women's Leadership Academy, we have lots of information for you, on and on and on. So there is so much more we could talk about. I wish I had you for another half hour, another hour. There's plenty we could talk about. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up the show. And we're going to wrap it up just like the Oscars wrap up. With,
I saw it coming. I saw this coming.
With an inspirational Best Picture. So what is a movie you saw that you thought should have received an Oscar or did receive an Oscar?
I would have to say, since the pandemic, I don't watch a lot of movies anymore, but I do a lot of Netflix. But I think the recent movie that I watched that I really, really liked, that I had so many reflections on, although it was an animation movie, it's Encanto. Because it's very powerful in a way, because it talks about the diversity, talks about, I think, the main actress or the main character trying to fit into the family, trying to be accepted, to ultimately embracing her own truth, right? So I feel like that was a very powerful story.
And say the title of the movie one more time.
Encanto.
Encanto. Oh yes, that just came out. I haven't been able to see that yet. Oh, fantastic!
I absolutely loved it. The music, how it's being portrayed, and because I think, in conjunction with Women's Month, right, that whole story is a lot of. Also, you can see a lot of women empowerment and kind of women narrative going through, right, among the three sisters, right. There's one that was very strong. There was one that was always very well loved and accepted, and you have one that is. It's just the opposite extreme of the two of them, right? So there's a lot to reflect on that and unpack on that. And apart from that, color was great, animation was great, music was great. So I absolutely loved it, and definitely would say that deserves definitely an Oscar.
And each of those young women was finding her truth. Each was different and special in her own way. Well, here's Best Picture that's really inspired me. I was looking at the list, and one that I will always remember is the film Schindler's List. It's a very important movie about the genocide that occurred in Europe during World War II. The United States and the world takes genocide very, very seriously. As many people know, recently the US government designated what was happening in Burma as a genocide. Genocide is very, very serious, and it's watching movies like Schindler's List that remind us that we must all work together to maintain our sense of humanity and be there for each other and support each other, and we can't let those atrocious actions occur. We must do what we can to prevent them, to stop them, to build a better world together. So, thank you so much, Elin. I wish we had more time. This has been a wonderful show, lots of great points. You are a wonderful mentor to our audience and women and men throughout Southeast Asia and America. Thank you so much for joining the show. I do hope I get to travel to Malaysia so we can meet in person. I do hope so.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jason, for having me, and thank you so much to US Mission to ASEAN for having me as well on the show. Thank you so much to all the audience dialing in. Really appreciate you. Have a great day.
Thanks so much to movie lovers, current and future leaders. Until the next time, take care.